Superman is James Gunn's cinematic relaunch of DC's most famous Boy Scout, an earnest, optimistic, utterly indestructible alien who represents the best of humanity. But somehow this movie managed to arrive under a marketing campaign so catastrophically misjudged it might as well have been masterminded by Lex Luthor himself. Because Superman isn't so much a film about Clark Kent trying to save the world as it is about James Gunn trying to showcase how James Gunn he is at being James Gunn. Instead of letting David Cornsweet, who's damn good in the suit, take center stage and become the new face of DC, all the oxygen got sucked up by James Gunn himself. Every interview, every snarky tweet, every pompous dismissal of fans who wanted Henry Cavill back, it was Gunn front and center. By the time the film actually dropped, you'd be forgiven for thinking Gunn was playing Superman himself. And it's a shame because Superman shows both Gunn's best and worst instincts as a director in glorious conflicting detail. On one hand, it's refreshingly bright and earnest, unafraid to embrace comic book silliness. It remembers that Superman is supposed to be hopeful. It's got charming banter, fun supporting players, and the occasional moment of genuine heart. But it's also a sprawling, overstuffed mess, constantly undercutting itself with jokes, fourth wall winks, and a bloated ensemble of DC characters and deep cuts that do absolutely nothing for the main story. Gunn can't seem to decide whether he wants to make a sincere Superman film or another irreverent Guardians of the Galaxy, so he does both at once, and neither comes out unscathed. Here's the good news, the casting is damn near perfect. Cornsweet is a bloody good Superman. He's got the jawline, the old school matinee idol charm, and most importantly, he actually feels like Clark Kent. There's a warmth to him, a genuine decency that's been missing since Christopher Reeve last wore the cape. He just wants to do the right thing, even when the entire planet seems determined to hate him for it. Unfortunately, he also spends about half the film reacting instead of acting. That's a script problem, not a performance problem. Cornsweet can only work with what he's given, and what he's given is a Superman who spends most of the runtime getting beaten up, captured, framed, and imprisoned in a pocket dimension. He doesn't drive the story, he's catching up to it. Then there's Lois Lane. Rachel Brosnahan does a decent job. She's fierce, intelligent, and absolutely refuses to be overshadowed. She and Cornsweet have real chemistry too, when they're permitted to be in the same scene together. I mean, honestly, we finally get a Lois and Clark who actually look the part, and the film keeps cutting away to the Justice Gang, arguing about brand names. Priorities, James. Speaking of which, the supporting cast is entertaining for the most part, but also bloated. Eddie Gathegi's Mr. Terrific is an absolute scene stealer. He's a tech genius with a deadpan wit who actually gets shit done. Guy Gardner is basically Nathan Fillion doing his lovable asshole routine with an epically bad haircut, truly embodying the character well, while Isabella Merced's Hawk Tour Girl flies around and hits things with a stick. That's it. Honestly, if you removed her from the film, you'd barely have to change anything except the runtime, and more time could be spent focusing on Superman. Then there's Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. Hoult goes all in on making Lex a smug, manic tech bro psychopath. At times, he's genuinely unsettling. At other times, he's so cartoonishly evil and childish, you half expect him to tie Lois to some train tracks. He gets some great scenes, like breaking into the Fortress of Solitude, but also has to deliver lines so on the nose, it's amazing he didn't break the fourth wall to wink at the camera. Finally, Jonathan and Martha Kent, played by Pruitt Taylor Vince and Neva Howell, bring a much-needed warmth and authenticity to the movie, even if the film doesn't give them much room to shine. Their most important moment comes late in the story, when a battered, disillusioned Clark retreats to Smallville after escaping Luthor's prison. It's here that Pa Kent reminds him why doing the right thing matters, no matter how hard it gets. A simple, heartfelt exchange that's a highlight in a film often too busy with interdimensional crises and CGI chaos. It's a shame the script treats him like an afterthought amid all the superhero spectacle, because these two characters sell the most important idea in the entire movie. That Superman's greatest power isn't his super strength, but the values Ma and Pa Kent taught him. Superman sets out to remind audiences that the last son of Krypton is meant to be a beacon of hope, and for large stretches of its runtime, it succeeds. Instead of yet another origin story, the film drops us into a world where Superman has been a public hero for 3 years. He's saved Metropolis countless times and become a global figure, too powerful for world governments to be comfortable. When he unilaterally stops the Moravian military, not Israel, from invading Janipur, not Palestine, saving thousands, it sparks an international crisis. Credit where it's due, Gunn nails the classic Superman dilemma of who polices the policeman, raising questions about accountability without sacrificing the character's integrity. There's real weight here, with the US government squirming over its alliance with Bravia, and even Lois Lane challenging Clark's right to intervene, leading to a breakup. But Gunn sets up serious themes, then refuses to let them breathe before piling on endless subplots as the movie races off in 10 directions at once. Lex, played with arrogance by Holt, is the architect of Superman's downfall. He hacks the Fortress of Solitude to reveal a message from Jor-El and Lara that claim Kal-El was sent to conquer Earth. It's an okay idea on paper, the world turning on its hero, Superman doubting his mission. But Jor-El and Lara don't just suggest conquest, they literally encourage Kal-El to have a harem of women and kill anyone that gets in his way. For a movie that wants to celebrate and be inspired by the comic book origins, this massive deviation of lore is genuinely baffling and will likely piss off a lot of people. Meanwhile, Luthor escalates by kidnapping Krypto the Superdog, breaking into the fortress with his nanotech-armed henchwoman the Engineer and Ultraman, and imprisoning Superman in a pocket dimension. The fortress feels like a proper alien relic, while Krypto is adorable and surprisingly vicious. But the pocket dimension subplot is pure bloat. Superman spends a massive chunk of the second act weakened, imprisoned, and forced to watch innocents be executed by Luthor, all while Metamorpho is coerced into making kryptonite to keep him contained. It's grim and harrowing, but it also sidelines the main character in his own film. The Justice Gang, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl are introduced as a sort of off-brand Justice League funded by Maxwell Lord. They're entertaining in isolation, but with the exception of Mr. Terrific, they're so poorly integrated they feel like studio-mandated setup for spin-offs rather than anything the story actually needs. Hawkgirl in particular does little more than scream and throw a dictator out of a window. Gunn wants it all, a heartfelt Superman story about choosing hope in the face of betrayal, a big geopolitical thriller about American alliances and interventions, a cosmic science fantasy adventure, and a goofy ensemble comedy with Guardians of the Galaxy-style banter. The result is messy and exhausting. Yet buried in all this chaos is the heart of a genuinely good Superman film. David Cornsweet is superb. He's gentle, earnest, and morally convincing. When he argues with Lois about Bravia, you genuinely believe he cares about saving lives over politics. Their relationship could have been the best part of the movie, except the film insists on splitting them up to indulge in other, less interesting side plots. The final act turns into a carnival of comic book excess. The pocket dimension collapses into a black hole over Metropolis. Luthor is revealed as the puppet master controlling Ultraman, a corrupted Superman clone. There's an invasion and supervillains to stop, and Gunn directs it all with gleeful abandon, like a kid dumping out his entire toy box. Some of it genuinely works and feels like classic pulpy comic book fun. But Luthor's plan to manipulate geopolitics so he can rule part of Bravia as a monarch is underdeveloped and muddies his motivations. The climax highlights the script's biggest problem. There are so many simultaneous crises that none of them land with the weight they should. The film can't decide if it wants to be an ideological thriller about Superman's right to intervene, a personal redemption arc for Clark Kent, or a flashy ensemble blockbuster, so it tries to be all of them. Worse, Gunn often undercuts moments of genuine sincerity with snarky jokes or jarring violence, as if he doesn't want the audience to take the movie seriously. There are some pretty shots, the Arctic landscapes, the Fortress of Solitude glowing like an alien cathedral, and Superman in some epic heroic poses. But the action is mostly a CGI green screen nightmare with swirling VFX that make Doctor Strange look restrained. Thematically, well, this is where you see Gunn trying. He wants this to be about hope, kindness, and humanity. He wants Superman to be the outsider who chooses to be better even when the world rejects him. And that's good, that's classic Superman. But it's buried under so much clutter. Political intrigue, social media satire, ultra-violent gags, and cringeworthy jokes about influencer culture. Superman wants to tell you a very big story about a very good man. And credit where it's due, James Gunn actually gets that part. This Superman is a big, soft-hearted Boy Scout who wants to save everyone, even a bloody squirrel at one point. Problem is, Gunn also can't help himself. Instead of focusing on that core struggle, Superman versus Lex, hope versus cynicism, we get a narrative so overstuffed it feels like the screenwriters were paid by the subplot. So what you're left with is a film that almost nails it. The heart is there, the optimism is there, the sense of wonder is also there, but it's buried under bloat, tonal whiplash, and the director's desperate need to prove he's funny. This is a Superman movie that's occasionally very good, often frustrating and always overshadowed by the ego of the man in charge. At its best, it's bright, hopeful, and unashamed to believe in its hero. It's a flawed, overstuffed, sometimes brilliant attempt to remind us who Superman is supposed to be. It just needed less self-indulgence, fewer jokes, and a lot more focus on Superman himself. It's proof that even when you get the costume, the casting, and the tone more or less right, you can still trip over your own feet.